Today, it is our pleasure to introduce you to Mary Abbajay. Mary is president of Career Stone Group LLC, a full-service organisational and leadership development consultancy that delivers talent and organisational development solutions to business and government. Her work and advice have appeared in the New York Times, the Harvard Business Review, Forbes, the Financial Times, and she is author of the best-selling book, Managing Up: How to Move Up, Win at Work, and Succeed with Any Type of Boss. In this interview, Mary and I will discuss how to manage your manager. So, Mary, with a Master's in Organisational Development, among a plethora of certifications from a number of institutions around the States, including Georgetown University, you're the CEO of Career Stone Group, which is a leadership development consultancy company. You're a frequent contributor to television, radio, print, anything really, where there is a platform, and it stands to reason for sure that you know quite a bit about how to manage people in the workplace and how management works in the workplace. So tell us a little bit about how you got into writing and lecturing and training all about leadership.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on the show. So I'm really passionate about people having really great workplace experiences. Right. You know, most of us spend a good portion of our waking hours at work. And so I really want those hours to be good hours and not bad hours. And the 20 years I've been working with teams and organizations and leaders, I kept hearing people complain about their bosses all the time, complaining about their managers. And I'm hearing the managers complaining about their employees all the time. And I'm thinking, people, we should just talk it out. Like, let's figure out how to work well with each other, because you're not going to change the other person. And so about, 10 years ago, my team and I created a workshop on managing up, like how to figure it out, how to manage the relationship with your manager. And then from that came the book. And so a publisher approached me and asked me about writing a book. And I said, giddy up, this is going to be great. And there's a gajillion books on how to be a great manager or a leader. Clearly no one's reading them because there's a lot of bad managers out there. But I thought there could be some more. There's a lot of room for someone to talk to help people how to learn how to navigate the boss that they actually have, not the boss they wish they had.
Yeah, and I guess it's huge, really. And when you talk to that audience, and we've all been there sometime, and you kind of wonder who manages the big boss then, at the end of the day. But it's up to us then how we can manage up. It's a really, really interesting subject. And as you said, for all the people out there, with all the different types. So tell us a little about some of your kind of typical manager types and how me as a worker, I can manage up.
Great. Well, first, I want you to know that managing up is about managing the relationship, right? It's not about being a sycophant or licking someone's boots or being a patsy, right? It's about managing that relationship with this boss, no matter what type of boss you have, so that you can be successful, they can be successful, and the organization can be successful. So there's lots of people come in all kinds of shapes and sizes, right? All kinds of flavors. So you might have bosses that are really easy to work with, that are really easy for you to work with, right? I call those the unicorn bosses. So there's not a lot you need to do if you're completely in sync. But you might have a boss who might be a nitpicker, maybe, or a micromanager, or an impulsive, or what I call the ghost boss. And this doesn't necessarily make them a bad person, but it might make them a bad manager for you. So these are the kinds of bosses that you need to figure out how to navigate, because you're not going to change who they are you? You can only change how you choose to interact with them.
Yeah, and I guess on the flip side of the coin, we're probably not going to change either. So it's identifying those elements that we can change.
Yes.
So what kind of nuggets, if you can give us maybe 2 or 3 elements of the relationship that people can change, and therefore kind of, I know what you're saying, manage the relationship, therefore managing your boss or getting things kind of going a little bit more your way.
So what we have to realize is that, as you said, we're not changing ourselves. We're not changing them. We might change how we interact with them, right? A little bit. So there's three basic things you need to be able to do to manage up. One is you have to pay attention to how your boss operates, how he, she, or they, what are their preferences? What are their work styles? How do they communicate? How much information do they like? What's most important to them? Their priorities, their preferences, their perspectives, their pet peeves. Get a really good sense of who they are, how they operate, what's important to them. By the way, you don't have to agree with it. You may not even like it. It could even be wrong. So try to learn who they are without judging them first. People can just be different. Then you have to take a good look at who you are, how you operate. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? How do you show up at work? Don't judge yourself either, but also be honest with yourself about how you're really showing up. And then you get to look at the gap and you would get to assess, how are you alike? How are you different? Where is it working? Where is it not working? And that's where really the power of your adaptability comes in. In what ways are you willing to adapt a little bit, maybe interact a little bit differently than you normally do in order to close that gap with your boss? For example, something simple like an introvert and an extrovert. So let's say that your boss is a really big introvert, which means they may not be showing up a lot. They may not be communicating a lot. They may not feel warm and fuzzy. And let's say you're an extrovert. So you like to interact and you like to dialogue and you like to brainstorm. Instead of complaining that your boss doesn't share information with you or doesn't meet with you, you need to think about, what can I do to build that relationship? Maybe I'm going to be proactive and schedule meetings with my boss. I get on their calendar. Maybe I'm going to, instead of waiting for information, maybe I'm going to ask them questions, like pull the information out. Instead of assuming that they're not warm and fuzzy or don't care about me, I'm going to take the driver's seat and really build that relationship better with them. So that's really what we're talking about, finding ways to actually navigate the person that your boss really is, not who you wish they were.
Okay, and sometimes then you'll also have a bunch of people working together, and I'll see that Mary gets on really well with Muriel, our manager, and I don't. So, what does that do then to a working relationship?
I love that question because I get that complaint a lot. Well, so-and-so gets on with her and this person just doesn't like me. So first of all, that person actually may not like you. So that's always part of the possibility, right? Let's be honest. Not everyone's going to love you. We're not all going to be everybody's cup of tea. But look to see how the person that does work well with your boss, look to see how they navigate them. Look to see how they communicate with them. Look to see if that person understands what your boss is really after. So often we resist what is. Stop resisting what is and figure out how to make it work. I'll give you an example. We've all been micromanaged before, right? People can't stand a micromanager. But instead of getting all angry about the micromanager, which, by the way, I can get because that's no fun. No one likes that. It's not right. But micromanagers need some information. They need extra control. They need extra inclusion. So you could complain all day long about that boss. Or you know what else you could do? You could be proactive and flood them with information. Give them the stuff they need before they ask for it. Be prepared for their involvement. Check in with them before you start a project. Find out what they want. If a micromanager comes to you and says, "Where is this thing?" you haven't been communicating enough. And here's the thing, Caitríona, everybody gets really worked up about this. Well, that's not fair. That's not right. And I get that. And you're not going to change that person. So you can either sit around and complain how that's not right, or you can put a little extra effort in and give that person what they want. And usually, once the micromanager has built enough trust with you, you've given them enough certainty, then they will give you your autonomy. So stop resisting what is. You're not going to like it, but it works. Flood them with information.
Yep. And it is the way it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah. And the converse of that, the boss, the manager that you can never find, you can never get hold of, you can never get the stamp of approval or just pass it on or whatever it is. Tell us about those guys and gals.
So I call those folks the ghosts, right? So those are the bosses that give you a project or they sign you something, then poof, they disappear and you can never find them. They're never around. So here's the thing with the ghosts. They are who they are. And by the way, people ghost for lots of reasons. Sometimes they ghost because they're an introvert. Sometimes they ghost because they're just too busy. They may want to be there for you, but they can't. Or sometimes, quite frankly, they ghost because they may be, as we say in America, a little retired in place, right? But whatever the reason, you're going to have to be proactive about getting what you need from them. So 3 quick things for the ghost. One is make sure you are scheduling check-ins to get critical input on the most important projects, right? Just because they ghost on you doesn't mean you get to ghost on them. So schedule regular meetings. 2, you're going to really have to do what we call figure it out. We actually call it something else with a foul word, which I won't use, Caitríona, but you're going to really have to figure things out on your own, which means going to other colleagues, getting a lot of advice, building your network. Quite frankly, a ghost boss could be a really great opportunity for people who like to be autonomous. And the third thing you want to do with the ghost boss is when you do get their time, when you do get that 15 minutes of that critical check-in, be succinct, be prepared. Go in with your highest priority items, get those checked off, and then get out.
So that's kind of a world apart from the micromanager,
Yep.
and you can't please all of the people all of the time. And maybe the ghost boss had been micromanaged before and they said, I'll never do that to anybody again. Maybe they didn't.
You're absolutely correct. A lot of times we manage others how we want to be managed. So to be in all transparency, my team calls me a ghost boss because I don't ever want to micromanage anybody. And I'm also a bit of I also have too much on my plate most of the time. But don't assume that your ghost boss doesn't care about you because you are absolutely right, Caitríona. They may be ghosting because they're so afraid of being such a micromanager. Assume positive intent.
I like that way to go. And how then, Mary, does the ghost manager differ from the seagull?
The seagull boss is one of my favorite bosses to talk about. So seagulls are bosses that fly around, and there's 2 kinds of seagulls. They either swoop and poop or they swoop and scoop. So the swooper and pooper will fly around, and all of a sudden they dive into a project or into a meeting and they just poop all over it. They just like cause chaos and disruption or conflict, and then they just leave, right? And then you're left with the mess. The seagull that swoops in, sees a project and says, oh, I like that project, and they take it away from you and they take it on their own. So seagulls are a whole nother sort of thing to deal with. So if you have a swooper and pooper, and you know this about your boss or your manager, you're just going to have to learn not to, this is going to sound awful, but you're going to have to learn not to take it personally. Be prepared for the swooping and the pooping. Be prepared for the chaos. This works really well if you have a team that you can kind of be ready, prepare yourself for how you're going to manage and handle this. Don't take it too much to heart. Like, see if you can't pick apart the feedback or what's helpful and disregard the rest. It's not easy. It's not fun, but it is what you can do when they do that. Those that scoop it away from you, that's really hard. Like, you worked hard on this project. It's important to you, and suddenly your boss is going to take it away. So a couple of reasons why they do this. Well, first of all, pay attention to when they do this. Oftentimes, a boss that swoops and scoops didn't realize that the project was going to be so highly visible or important or cool or new. So keeping your boss apprised of your projects, especially the kind that they tend to scoop, can be really helpful, like really keeping them incorporated. So hopefully they won't feel the need to totally scoop it because I already feel involved.
Right. And so, as you said there, don't take it personally because it is the way they are. It's the way they work, and it's the way we work as well. And that's the relationship and the dynamics of it. But sometimes, Mary, there are difficult people, and relationships are difficult, and the boss may well be difficult with everybody. So what about the organization? What kind of responsibility should the organization take then in managing my manager who may be difficult?
Well, so, you really hit on the thing that's really sort of the crux of this whole thing. Until organizations actually put a value on how managers are treating their people, how managers are managing their people part. Not a lot. It's kind of going to be a crapshoot, if you will. So, because let's remember how most people get promoted. Most people get promoted because they're good at their technical job. They're a good salesperson. They're a good engineer. They're a good coder. So we put them into management without really knowing if they're going to be good at the people side. And then our organizations don't train people how to be good managers. And then worst of all, they don't often hold that people part of the equation, hold people accountable for it. They're still measured on the business line results. And so until organizations actually understand and can connect the business dollars, and they are easily provable how a good, engaging manager that develops and cares for those people actually is good for the bottom line. But until organizations start holding managers accountable for employee engagement, for a good culture, for morale, and for the positivity in the organization, it's going to be really dependent on whether or not a manager decides to bring that him or herself. So organizations have a huge role in this. And if they did a better job of it, Caitríona, I wouldn't have needed to write this book.
For sure. I think there's always a need because people are people. We'll always have the vagaries, which is good. Life would be very boring otherwise, Mary, for sure. Mary, as well, and I just kind of alluded to there a few moments ago in the question about the introvert or ghost manager. But do you think that some people will learn from their mistakes and they'll say, or the experiences, I should say, that they have had during the course of their career, and they will say, I will never do that? Or do you think sometimes they emulate them because they get results then? If somebody's a hard and fast and difficult boss and they get the results because people are afraid, instead of being the encouraging manager, which is their natural way, do you think people emulate?
I think they emulate and I think they learn. Yeah. So I think you have two kinds of people. I think you have people that have a high amount of self-awareness and a high amount of emotional intelligence, who are the ones, and empathy, who understand that to get the most out of people, that we want to be able to build them up. We want to value them. We want to coach them. We want to show them the way. These are the people that understand that leadership today is more about influence than authority. And so you might have somebody who has a very authoritarian boss, or a bad boss, a difficult boss, and says, I will never be that way. And they use that experience to learn how to be a good manager. I always say, don't give up an opportunity to learn from a bad boss, because you can learn a lot. But you're also going to see people that think leadership is about being an authoritative person, that is about like command and control. And when they see that modeled, they will emulate it. And I don't want to make this a gender thing, but we do know it is kind of a gender thing. We do know that there's a lot more of masculine leadership is more associated with command and control, and female leadership is more associated with having compassion and transformation, as opposed to the transaction. So there's a lot of people that are still emulating that command and control because they've seen it perhaps in the military, or they've seen it in another workplace. And I'm here to say, although there are times where you do need to be command and control, like if the ship is sinking, you need to get people off that ship. But for the most part, we know through science and research that that's not the best way to lead.
Anecdotally, and we're in November 2020 right now, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's quite interesting. There's a lot of dialogue around the female leaders in the world and the male leaders, and the approaches that are taken, and the positive results or not so positive results comparatively, and I think a lot of that goes back a little as well to, and again, not to make it a gender thing, but a little bit more about emotional intelligence and empathy. And let's just get this thing done first, and then the businesses will be fine. Perhaps that approach, as you said, in the sinking ship, we got to keep it. We got to keep it afloat.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, you are absolutely right. The stats are out there.
Yeah, and they don't lie. There's a big difference, Mary, and this is the world that you live in and what you advise and guide people on how to be a good leader. And what is the difference, or maybe a few fundamental differences between being a leader and a boss or a manager?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, I go back and forth on this all the time because I think there's a lot of overlap, but I think a leader needs to set the vision, right? And they need to inspire. They need to walk the talk, if you will. They need to model. They really need to be out there mobilizing the troops and getting people. They need to win over hearts and minds, and they need to pick a direction and win over hearts and minds. And then they need to create, I don't want to use this word, but I'm going to use it anyway, like an army. Like they need to create a following. They need to set the conditions for success. And the conditions for success is where the managers come in. And so the managers are really about the boots on the ground, mobilizing the people, developing the people, making sure the resources, which are the people, are really put to their best use. So it's in the managers that should be developing the talent, molding the talent, valuing the talent, enabling the talent, helping people get what they need to execute the vision. That's kind of how I see the difference.
Right, and in recognizing the talent of people. So, where you have the boots on the ground, that's where a lot of the hard work is done, and a lot of the invisible work is done, and that's the hard place to be, and that's the right place to have a good manager as well, as a good leader, I think, to bring people along.
That's right.
It's not easy because we're all different.
We are all different. And the thing about managing up, I want people to understand is that I want them to see it as a tool of empowerment, right? The more you are able to adapt and work with people who are different than you, to really take control of your career, not to let someone who's difficult or hard to work with derail your career. Because when we learn to manage up, when we learn to navigate, deal successfully with people who are really different than us and difficult, those are the kind of skills that make a great manager, right? Because we all want managers that can see us all for our unique selves, to see what the unique value we bring in, and to adapt to us a little bit to help us be the best that we can be. So if you can learn to do that with people above you and across from you, then think of those are the skills that you're going to use that is going to make you that great manager that everybody wants to work for.
Yeah, and some people are appointed into those roles, Mary, going to what you said earlier on as well. If you're good at the job, if you're a good coder, and good people are put into the wrong roles, how can a manager say, look, I'm happy doing my job. Thank you very much for recognizing I'm very good at it, but I don't want to manage people. People don't want me to manage them either.
Well, you hit your finger right on it because, I get so excited about this. So, first of all, that happens a lot, right? In a lot of organizations, one of the only ways to get a promotion or to make more money or to get more visibility, to find more success, is to push people up into management, even when they don't want to be a manager. I can't tell you the number of people I come across organizations, they don't want to manage. It was the only way up. So I think organizations have to get really clear about what they want in management and why they are giving people those jobs. Perhaps they could also create more technical tracks for people to excel in technically without having to go into management. There's no reason why we can't do both. There's no reason why we can't celebrate those who want to go into management and those who who want to excel in their technical aspects of their job. So I think organizations have to rethink this whole promotional thing, this whole hierarchy thing, and people's career pathing.
So maybe some of those guys and gals, Mary, might need to get your book, Managing Up, and manage up and say, hello, no, I'm happy where I am doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm happy where I am. And maybe you could pay me more money because I'm really good at it. Right?
There you go. Yes. And that's where your communication comes in. Mary, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk with us. I really appreciate it. It's been great. And we could go on. And like everybody who listens to this will go, oh, I know that person. Or maybe that's me. Well,
you say that. I do hope that when managers read the book or they listen to this, I do want managers to think about, what kind of a boss am I? how easy or hard is it? Am I making it for people to manage up to me? Am I really clear with my employees about what my preferences are, my priorities, and my pet peeves? Like if you are a manager, I want you to have a conversation with your team within the next 7 days of listening to this to really learn about how you all like to operate. What are your preferences, your priorities, your pet peeves? And then ask each other, what can I do more of, less of, or differently to work better with you?
Excellent. And I was just going to ask you one for the road. So you said that you might be a bit of a ghost manager with your own team. What type of manager would you prefer to be? What's your number one type?
I would prefer, if I had my druthers, I would say I'd like to be a little more coaching. So I'd like to be able to spend a little more time with my team. I'd like to be able to meet with them every day and be a little more available to them to really make sure that that they're getting what they want out of their job, and that I'm giving them enough opportunity and to learn a little bit more about what they'd really love to do and what their really future goals are. But as with everybody, you get really caught up in the day-to-day. So if someday I say I'm going to have more time and I'm going to ghost less and I'm going to really be there 24/7.
Sounds like a leader to me. Mary Abbajay, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's been a delight.